Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I thought what I would do today is something a little bit different to the usual videos that I've got up on my channel. So of course I live stream all of my Zwift races, but what I don't do, but what I have been very keen to do, is to start doing a bit of a mini race recap. So that's what we're going to do today. And today we're looking at a race I did on, I think it was Friday evening, where I won. So a nice positive video to recap. So let's get into it. So 3 minutes ago, just in the start pen here, let's speed up this footage and ready to go. There's only 5 riders, so a small group of us, thinking that, maybe we can get a little bit of a solo breakaway going. But in all honesty, I had a bit of a dodgy race earlier in the week. I've just had 10 days off on vacation in Morocco, and before that I'd been through a bit of a beast of a house move, relocating from Ascot in Berkshire down to the beautiful, stunning New Forest in the southwest of England. Took a Herculean effort to do it. It drained me, it killed me, but the holiday was perfectly timed. That said, the race I did on Monday where I abandoned it, I just could not keep my heart rate down. My legs felt fine. In fact, the heart rate being at 180 wasn't even bothering me at the time. I wasn't feeling overly stressed. But what was wrong was I had this strange sensation where I couldn't feel my torso effectively, which was quite alarming. So I chose to just sort of back out of that race. I finished the race, but I didn't finish by competing. Did a couple of sort of short rides around the New Forest here at home, all at sort of zone 2, so nothing too strenuous, nothing too difficult, just to get the legs going again, get myself acclimatized before I decided to come back and attempt another race. That race is this race, so let's get started. 5 laps around Zwift's Neokyo crit course. Absolutely love Zwift crit racing because, of course, you get to figure out on each lap exactly where the points where you need to go are and exactly where you need to recover. This particular course is very, very flat. There are a few false flat sections which we'll come to in just a second. I'll show you those in just a moment. Let me just switch to this view so that my massive head isn't taking up the screen on the left hand side over there. In fact, let me just move myself over here a bit. There we go. So, let's go. 5 riders, as I've mentioned. I am using this sort of lead-in and part of lap 1 to kind of just try and determine where my legs and my lungs are at this point, having had a bit of a dodgy experience earlier in the week. But it transpires that I'm actually feeling pretty good. So especially early on in this race, I'm able to hold well above 4 watts per kilo for quite a while. It might have, in fact, it'd be my best power numbers for a couple of months. Despite the fact that I did get into a very good racing and training routine. But I think the recovery has really helped me there kind of bank the work I've put in. So that's on demonstration, that's on show here as we go up this false flat that I mentioned, where I'm holding 5 watts per kilo. And we're building a bit of a gap already in the very first part of the first lap over 3rd, 4th and 5th place riders. TKG is the only guy who can stay with me, and he sits in my wheel for quite a while. And that ends up being a bit of the story of this race. TKG sitting right in my wheel for a while. What I decided to do here is give him a bit of a ride on to encourage him. I've realised that we're building this small gap between us and 3rd, 4th and 5th. So by hopefully giving a bit of a ride on, saying, great, cool, come ride with me, we'll do this. So for a while we hold this 3-second gap, but as any Zwifter knows, 3 seconds is that kind of awkward time where you think, oh God, can I make this up? If you're dying and you're on your backside, 3 seconds can feel like 5 miles. But most of the time, as you can see, as is quite clearly nicely illustrated in the top right hand side there on the 3D map, 3 seconds is also enough where if you put in enough of an effort, you can bridge that gap, you can get back on. And that is exactly what Ultravol does. However, a good race tactic, if you are an experienced Zwifter, is if you spot that sort of thing happening, if you see someone trying to bridge a small enough gap or a sizable gap, the time that you as the front rider goes again is exactly the moment they get back on your wheel. So they bust their guts, they bury themselves to catch up. Let them. The minute they touch wheels, you go again and you build a big gap and you go away again. And that's exactly what happened here. Ultravol got within touching distance. In fact, the gap was 0 seconds. I put the power on again and we built the exact same gap. And this time, in fact, because mentally he's been beaten, the gap actually goes out a bit more. So the elastic has snapped there already. So myself and TKG, like I say, continue in this sort of 2-man group. But what happens is I want to try and build a bit of a bigger gap so that Altval doesn't try and bridge again. So I'm going to start now putting down a good bit of power for a considerable period of time. So I started to just bring it up a little bit now. So rather than sitting at 3.5 watts per kilo, which is very comfortable, I start to try and get up to the sort of 5 watts or 4 watts per kilo marks, I should say, not 5 watts per kilo. That comes later. It doesn't take a lot of big efforts. In fact, all it takes is the micro effort. So points where the gradient becomes 2 watts per kilo, or these two little bumps around this bend here, sort of, the first third of each lap, and we'll talk about that again as we get into it in lap 3. All you really need to do is squeeze in the pedals going up the hill. Keep going on the pressure on the pedals as you go just over the hill, maybe even a bit more as you just start the descent, but then that's when you can recover. Now this sort of a Neokyo garden section here is an interesting section because of course it's where you can use and then regain a new power up. It's also, again, somewhat flat with a little bit of down, a little bit of up in this bit where we are right now. If you're not paying attention, you really can lose the will and lose the race therefore. So what I tend to try and do here is just make sure that I am staying in front of TKG. As I will illustrate in the next lap and the fourth lap, what I'm going to try and do is stay in front to try and make sure the gap between us and the riders behind stays sizable. I want to try and build a bit of a gap. Not too much. We don't need to put 5 minutes into them. We just need to be in front of them, right? It's a crit race. We just need to win. We don't need to win by a country mile. We just need to win by enough. So I'm going to basically stay in front of TKG until, or unless I should say, he or I are using power-ups that dictate we should take the lead. So for example, the drafting power up that I've just achieved, you'll see that I also sort of use that when he goes in front. So we are now getting onto the false flat that I mentioned, this 2%. It's not big, it's not a big climb at all. In fact, if you sort of had your eyes closed and you're just putting down a bit of power, you wouldn't realize it. Like erg mode on the trainer doesn't really do much at this point in time. However, for the riders who are paying attention to the gradient, if you're putting down a little bit of power and the other riders just put down another half a watt per kilo more, they will get away from you. So here's me putting down the 4 watts per kilo, getting over the climb and then relaxing a little bit on the descent, allowing TKG just to ride off in front of me. So any second now I'm going to jump back in front of him again to make sure that the gap between us and 3rd, 4th and 5th remains the same. Maybe we can try and build a little bit more. And the point I'm going to try and use my power-ups is pretty much before I get another one. So I don't want to blow my load too early, and that's probably a bad term to use, and use the power-ups prematurely. I don't really need to at this point. My legs aren't suffering, the chest isn't hurting, I'm feeling absolutely fine, well within control. So I'll use the power-up just before we go under the green banner, about now. There we go. And perfect, because he's used the aero power up, which means he's going to go super fast. I can just catch under his coattails and relax then. As soon as the aero power up is done, and we go through the sort of a little S bend and up the hill, I'm going to put a little bit more pressure on like that. And at this point, I'm going to get back on front again. A little bit of a janky footage there, so let's see if we can recover that. There we go. Speed things back up again. So at this point, I've been pulling on the front a fair bit, and TKG has been getting a nice free and easy ride. So what I decide to do in the 4th or halfway through the 4th lap and going into the 5th lap is let him take the front a little bit more. We've got enough of a lead now over the 3rd, 4th and 5th place riders, so there's absolutely no need for us to be powering on. All we need to do is try and make sure that our power is just a little bit more or even equal to what Altval is deciding to try and do. So if he puts out 4 or 5 watts per kilo, I'll try and do the same. But most importantly, as long as that gap doesn't start tumbling, we're okay. So up the false flat again, here we go. Nice easy power, trying to just make sure that we're not losing any ground to Altval at this point in time, and trying to just make sure that I'm not doing too much work for TKG, but also that I'm obviously not, going to sort of try and go too early. At this point in time, although I feel great and I feel pretty good, I am recognising that my heart rate on the top left there is still too high for what it would ordinarily be. For this sort of power and this sort of duration and this sort of, race state, I would expect my heart rate to be at least 10 to 15 beats per minute slower, I should say. So 155, 160, 165, that sort of rate for this effort. But it is a bit high. So deciding not to go too early and do too much too soon, and to effectively, end up gifting TKG the win, I'm going to just rein it in a little bit. So he's got his aero power up. I'm holding on to the front anyway. And at this point, I start to think, okay, if I can't get away from him here, what I don't want to do is that typical newbie thing of just pulling on the front the whole way, being an absolute hero and a superhero, and then just having him out sprint me at the end. So I'm going to sit in his wheel for a bit now, give him a taste of his own medicine. So that's exactly what I do. So I've got the drafting power up, using it nice and comfortably. We're about to go over the finish, or under the finish banner for the bell lap, for the final lap. And that's where you'll really start to see me sitting in second wheel rather than putting on the front too much. Power-ups, of course, will dictate a change of strategy depending on what happens. He obviously starts to get away here, so I have got to put in a bit of an effort. And I do think, oh, blimey, okay, he's getting away. But I think that was all he had in the tank. I mean, you can see him trying to put in a little bit more effort here to get away from me. I think he thinks I'm just going to try and go for it in the final lap. That's probably too soon. I think given the sort of minor or little sort of undulations that do exist on this course, and given that my power is evidently high, or my threshold is definitely higher than what TKG's is, for him to try and go that soon is a little bit foolish. If I were him and I was up against a rider that was demonstrating a bit more power in the locker than what I had, I would be doing what I'm doing. I'd be sucking that wheel, sitting on and saying, fine, you pull me along and I'll try and beat you in the sprint. And that's exactly what brought me a lot of success when I was racing Cat A last year. Evidently you come up against riders that just have got more than you, especially in like races like Downtown Dolphin, where you can see that comparatively on the sort of little mini climbs in that course, they're cruising up them. So all your job is to do is to make sure that you stay with them. You haven't got to beat them every lap. You haven't got to be the one at the front of the entire duration of the race. You've just got to be the one to get over the finish line first. So race smart, conserve your efforts. Don't burn the matches, as they say. So here, I'm going to just try and sit with TKG for a little bit, try and recover a little bit, try and bring the heart rate down. You can see I'm breathing a little bit heavier now, into the nose, out through the mouth. And TKG is basically being forced to sit on the front. So I'm not really concerned about my power. I'm not really concerned about my effort at this point. All I really care about is making sure that my watts per kilo on the right-hand side up there is about the same as what TKG's is. Of course, he's using the aero power up there, so I had to put down a bit more power just to stay with him. So I'm not really racing here. I'm just marking, which is a legit race tactic. You see it done on the World Tour. You see it done in real crit races as well. Last time I did a crit race over in Kent at the cyclopark. I fell foul to exactly this. I had far more power than the other riders behind me, but I pretty much pulled quite a few of the sort of senior riders around the course. They just sat on their wheel and outsprinted me at the end. I really should have been a bit smarter than that and thought, look, I don't need to be a hero here. I just need to be first. So I'm going to sit with TKG. He's not used his power up yet. I've got my aero power off the bank, which is perfect. It's exactly the power up you want for a crit race finish like this. And you can see it starts to get a bit sketchy because TKG's power starts to fluctuate. Little bumps here. Look, he's trying to pull away. He doesn't want to compete in a sprint because I think he's empty here. Perfect. Just sit on. I only need to get to 300 or 400 meters, then just empty the tank. But that doesn't even need to happen, as you'll see. So I'm holding on as well, feeling pretty comfortable, slowing the cadence a little bit in a second, just to make sure that I'm ready to get out of the saddle. Waiting for him to use his power up. There we go. I just need to wait a few more seconds and then use mine, knowing that the aero boost lasts about 200 or so meters. So now I'm going to start my sprint. I look up, I'm watching, checking, just observing his watts per kilo. I realise he's not sprinting. Cool, okay. Well, I don't need to now try and do 12, 13, 14 watts per kilo. I just need to do enough to make sure I'm a couple of seconds ahead. I sit up before the finish line, roll through in first place. There we go. That's the end of the race. So, really pleased with that. That's not suggestive of me being back on great form. In fact, if we look at the watts per kilo there for the duration, 3.9 watts for 20 minutes, 3.8 watts for the half an hour that the race took. So nothing to write home about, nothing legendary of note there, but really pleased to be able to do that and to be able to feel so comfortable with my heart rate. Let's be honest, at quite a high number there. Usually it should be sitting at 160-ish for me. So to have it regularly or on average sitting up at 170 and to feel pretty happy with that and not feel like I'm about to die is pretty good. So yeah, there's the little mini race recap. I hope you enjoyed that. I'll do a few more of these as the races unfold. They're a good alternative because of course Zwift live streams are usually for me happening late in the evening. They take 30 to 40 to 50 minutes. Hopefully the sort of race recap format of 10 to 15 minute videos is more bite-sized for you. I would love your feedback, so please do give the video a like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. If you're over on Instagram, you can find me at that Berkshire Cyclist. That name is going to change soon, given that I'm no longer in Berkshire. But if you really do want to support me, head on over to Just Ride or hijustride.com and pick up some cool merch as well. Thanks for tuning in. See you around, and hope to give you a good race on Zwift at some point soon. Cheers, peace, good vibes only. See ya.